My name is John. I'm Brazilian, a barber here in São Paulo. And I'll tell you something, if someone had told me that one day I'd get mixed up in an international mess in Paris with rich people and corporate secrets, I would have laughed in their face. But it happened, not even 2 months ago. It all started when Carla, my wife, decided to enter a promotion for a cosmetics brand. The prize was a trip to Paris. I laughed and said, "Come on, woman, nobody wins those things." But she insisted. Sent in a photo, made a video, wrote a nice little essay. And then, out of nowhere, an email arrives one day saying, "Congratulations, Carla. You and a guest are going to Paris, all expenses paid." Carla was jumping on the sofa, screaming like a kid. I was suspicious. I said, "This is a scam, Carla. Let's just drop it." But she wouldn't hear of it. She went on the website, confirmed everything, and before I knew it, we were on a plane heading to France. When we arrived in Paris, I felt like I was in another world. Everything was beautiful, fragrant, chic. The streets seemed almost too clean. I walked a little slowly, afraid of bumping into someone important. Carla was all excited, pointing at everything. "Look there, John, the Eiffel Tower. Look at the river. Look at that beautiful building." And all I could think was, I hope they don't send us the bill for all this later. On the third day, a strange invitation came. The company that sponsored our trip said we had access to an exclusive event called the Night of the Visionaries, just for special and influential people. I said to Carla, "Honey, maybe we should just stay at the hotel, right? What if it's some kind of prank?" But she was so excited she dragged me along. She said, "John, it's Paris. Let's experience different things." We arrived at the event. It was in a super chic ballroom, in an old building, full of crystal chandeliers, beautiful people everywhere. There were men in impeccable suits, women in dresses that must have cost more than my car. I was there in a borrowed blazer, feeling like a fish out of water. Carla was glowing. She looked like a princess. She kept whispering, "John, did you see that guy? He's a fashion influencer, and that one is the CEO of I don't know what." I'd reply, "I don't know any of them, Carla. These guys don't get their hair cut at my shop." The event began with speeches. A bunch of people talking about the future, technology, innovation. It sounded nice, but I didn't understand half of it. Until a man named Edward Santoro took the stage. Brazilian, well-dressed, looked like a TV host. Everyone applauded him enthusiastically. Edward took the microphone and said, "My friends, I am here tonight to tell you that I have something capable of changing the course of many companies, and even governments. But I need the trust of all of you." Carla nudged me. "John, what a charming man." I rolled my eyes. Charming, my foot. This guy looks like he sells a wrecked car and passes it off as new. As he spoke, I noticed some security guards circling the room. The atmosphere started to feel strange. Some people were whispering, others were looking around. Carla asked, "Did you notice there are more security guards than waiters?" "I did," I replied, "and I'm finding this very weird." Edward continued, "What I have in my hands is something that could bring down major economic groups, but it could also be used to protect our country." At that point, a few people began to leave the room discreetly. They seemed scared. Carla pulled my arm. "John, let's get out of here too." I said, "Now I want to see where this is going." Suddenly, the lights went out, and I swear my heart almost stopped. A large screen lit up, showing images of documents, graphs, spreadsheets, all with the names of big companies, banks, politicians. Edward's voiceover said, "I've been gathering proof for years. Powerful people are deceiving millions. But tonight, I want to decide whether to expose it all or to keep this to protect our country." Carla whispered in my ear, "John, if this isn't a scam, I don't know what is." I just said, "If it's a scam, it's the best produced scam I've ever seen in my life." When the lights came back on, Edward was sweating. He looked at everyone and said, "I need to know who is with me and who is against me." The room fell into a silence so deep you could hear a clock ticking, and I thought, great, now we've accidentally walked into a movie and there's no way out. After Edward said that, Who is with me and who is against me? Bit Carla and I froze in our chairs. It felt like no one was breathing anymore. The hall was packed, but the silence made everything even stranger. Edward looked around, wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "I know many people here are involved in businesses that couldn't stand the light of day. But I also know that some of you came here to do the right thing." Carla gripped my arm tightly and whispered, "John, I think we should sneak out slowly." I whispered back, "It's too late now. If we get up, they'll think we're hiding something too." She rolled her eyes but stayed quiet. Edward took a deep breath and continued, "What I have is proof of giant companies committing fraud in the billions. Data on politicians taking money to look the other way. Big people stealing from the little guys every single day." At that moment, an elegant blonde woman raised her hand and asked, "And why don't you go to the police, Edward?" He replied seriously, "Because even the police have people on the payroll. If I were just another whistleblower, they'd silence me before I even reached the station." Carla looked at me, her eyes wide. "John, do you think any of this is true?" "I don't know, Carla, but nobody fakes videos like that. There must be something big going on here." Suddenly, one of the security guards approached Edward and said something in his ear. Edward's tone of voice changed. He seemed tense. "I need to step away for a moment. Please remain here. I'll be back in a few minutes." He stepped down from the stage and disappeared through a side door. The hall was left in a weird limbo. Some people started to get up, but were held back by security. Carla whispered, "John, I'm starting to get scared." "You're just starting now. I've been scared since I set foot in this place." Meanwhile, a waiter passed by serving champagne. I took a glass to look busy, but my hand was shaking so much I almost spilled it all. Carla didn't want any. She kept whispering to me, "John, look closely. These people aren't smiling. Everyone is afraid. They know Edward has something serious on them. And we're in the middle of it, Carla. A couple of Brazilians caught in a shark fight. This is what we get for traveling so far from home." Suddenly, a woman in a red dress who was sitting near us struck up a conversation. "You're Brazilian, right? I could tell by the accent. I'm a journalist." Carla replied cheerfully, "Yes, we're from Brazil." "You too." The woman introduced herself as Livia. She spoke softly. "I'm Brazilian, but I've lived here for years. And let me give you some advice. Get out of this. Edward is involved with some very heavy data. Big companies, banks, even governments. If he goes down, he'll want to take everyone with him." I asked, "But is he lying or not?" Livia looked around before speaking. "He's not. What he has could bring down some very big players, but there's a problem. He also wants to profit from it. He's trying to sell this information to the French government, or maybe even another country." Carla turned pale. "So he's not a hero?" "No one here is a hero," Livia said. "This room is full of people who want to buy his silence or get rid of him." I leaned against the wall. My head was spinning. Carla shook me. "John, we need to decide. Either we leave now or we stay and get even deeper into this mess." I sighed. "And if we leave now, Carla, the security guards won't let us. They'll think we know something. We'd better stay quiet until we see how this plays out." She crossed her arms, irritated. "I knew this trip would lead to trouble. I should have listened to you." At that moment, the lights flickered. The microphone crackled, and suddenly Edward was back on stage. He looked like he'd been running. His hair was a mess, his suit a bit disheveled. "I have to be quick," he said out of breath. "I've discovered that someone here is betraying me and tried to hand me over to dangerous people." The blonde woman from before shouted, "You're the one who's paranoid, Edward. You're playing with fire, and you want us to join your game." Edward held up a hand. "I'm not playing. I have proof. And if anything happens to me, everything will end up on the internet. All the conversations, all the documents. No one will walk away clean." Carla turned to me, desperate. "John, for the love of God, let's go." I was sweating. But at the same time, something told me I had to stay until the end, because if we left, maybe we'd never understand what was really happening. And I thought, where I come from, the biggest secret I ever kept was when I hid a beer behind the propane tank. Now I'm in the middle of espionage in Paris. Edward was on stage, sweating, breathing hard, and the entire room was staring at him without blinking. There were people with their arms crossed, people biting their nails, others looking like they were doing math in their heads, like, how much is this going to cost me? I pulled Carla into a corner and said softly, "Honey, if things get crazy, we run to the bathroom and climb out the window." She snorted. "John, this isn't some back alley bar, this is Paris. The bathrooms don't even have windows." Edward kept talking. "What I have are confidential data from banks, tech companies, construction firms. All of you in one way or another are connected to this." At that, the murmuring started. A man in the back shouted, "That's a lie. You're trying to extort us." Edward replied, "A lie? Then explain this transfer right here." And he showed a bank statement on the screen. The name of the man who shouted was on it. The man fell silent. He sat there, trembling, as if he'd been hit by an invisible slap. Carla was holding my arm so tight I thought I'd have a bruise. "John, we need to get out of here. This is getting dangerous." "Carla, if we get up now, they'll think we're part of this too." "What if we're taken hostage, John? It'll be all over the news. Brazilian couple disappears at luxury event in Paris." "If it is, I hope they use a nice picture of us, right?" She gave me a light slap on the shoulder. Meanwhile, the Brazilian journalist, Livia, approached us again. Her press badge was flipped backward, so no one could read her name. She said quietly, "You need to understand that Edward isn't just a guy who wants to do justice. He's negotiating this information, and not just with the French government. There are people from other countries offering millions for this data." Carla asked, "But what if he just releases it all for free on the internet?" Livia gave a sad smile. "Then he signs his own death warrant. Powerful people don't forgive those who mess with their business." I felt a chill. "Are you saying this guy could get killed?" Livia nodded. "Or just disappear forever, here or anywhere else in the world?" Carla looked at me, desperate. "John, let's go. Please." But before I could answer, a loud noise echoed through the tent. It sounded like metal hitting metal. Everyone turned their heads. 2 security guards were shoving a man into the room. The man's face was covered with a cloth. Edward pointed at him and said, "Here is the one who tried to betray me." The guests were in shock. The guard pulled off the cloth, and to everyone's surprise, it was one of the event organizers, a stylish Frenchman I had seen earlier, smiling and taking pictures with the businessman. Edward shouted he was about to sell me out for 30 million euros. He was going to hand me over to the very men I'm exposing. The Frenchman started talking nervously, mixing French and English. I didn't understand a thing, but he seemed to be denying everything. Edward said, "I have messages, I have recordings. He was spying on me from the beginning." The atmosphere got so heavy I was sure a fight was about to break out. But instead the businessmen started to slip away. Some tried to leave quickly, others pretended they were going to the restroom. Carla nudged me. "John, if they're leaving, we should too. And what if security doesn't let us? Then we'll pretend you're feeling sick." Meanwhile, Edward was shouting, "No one leaves until I decide what to do with this information. Anyone who leaves, I will consider an enemy." At that moment, I knew the situation had become a ticking time bomb. Livia, the journalist, grabbed my arm. "You two need to stay calm. Edward is cornered, but he doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just wants to make sure he gets out of here alive." Carla asked, "But does he really have all this proof? Or is he bluffing?" Livia sighed. "I've seen part of the material. It's real. Names, bank accounts, documents. If he releases it all, a government could fall." I said, "Then why doesn't he just release it?" "Because he's negotiating. He's trying to see who will pay more to buy his silence." At that, Edward pointed his finger at everyone. "You have until tomorrow night to decide. Either you pay or the proof goes out to the world." Carla looked at me, frightened. "John, is this man demanding a ransom?" "Honey, I think so. But unlike in the movies, there's no armed hero here to save anyone." Carla sighed. "We just wanted to take some pictures at the Eiffel Tower, John." "I know, Carla, I know. D. And I thought, who would have thought our biggest adventure in Paris would be trying to get out of a meeting full of nervous millionaires alive? After Edward shouted that no one was leaving until he decided, the hall fell into a silence so profound you could hear the pop of champagne corks. Carla turned to me and whispered, "John, I swear to God, if we get out of this alive, I will never again complain about staying home on the couch." I gave a nervous chuckle. Let's just hope we don't have to sell the couch to pay for a lawyer, right, Carla? Meanwhile, Edward got off the stage and began to walk among the tables. He moved slowly, looking at each person one by one, as if trying to read their minds. Some businessmen averted their gaze, others tried to smile, but the smile would die halfway. Everyone was completely at a loss for what to do. Edward stopped near a bald man in a light blue suit and pointed his finger. "You, Mr. Anthony, have direct ties to the embezzlement in the construction of the new subway lines. Do you want me to show the contract here?" The man's eyes widened and he stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." Edward held up his tablet and showed a document. It had signatures, company logos, everything. "Do you recognize this, or should I read it out loud?" The man lowered his head. He looked like a deflated balloon. Carla moved closer to my ear. "John, I'm starting to think this Edward guy isn't bluffing." "Me too, Carla, and that's what scares me the most." At that, one of the men, tall, dark-haired with thick glasses, stood up and said loudly, "Has this turned into a courtroom? You're no judge, Edward. Do you think you can just destroy people's lives like this?" Edward calmly replied, "I'm no judge, but I'm tired of seeing you steal and get away with it. Someone has to show the world what you do." The man shouted back, "And who are you, huh? A guy who wants money just like us. You want to sell this information. You're no saint." Edward just stared at him in silence. Then he said, "Maybe I'm not a saint, but at least I'm giving you a chance to give back what you took." The argument devolved into pandemonium. People talking all at once. Some businessmen started accusing each other. One man shouted, "You're in on this too, Henry. I saw your name on the list." Henry retorted, "Shut up, Caesar. You're in it up to your neck too." Carla grabbed my arm, frightened. "John, this is going to turn into a brawl." "If it does, try not to film it, Carla. We don't need to be on the national news as the curious Brazilian tourists." Meanwhile, Edward got back on stage and tapped the microphone to get silence. "Enough! If you keep fighting, I'll release everything right now." The men stopped instantly. It was almost like magic. Edward took a deep breath and said, "I don't want to see anyone arrested or dead. I want you to stop playing with people's money. I want you to give back at least part of what you stole. And I want you to feel the same fear you make others feel." The blonde woman, the same one from the beginning, stood up slowly and asked, "And if someone here agrees to pay, do you guarantee nothing will leak?" Edward replied, "If you pay, I'll hold everything. But if I die or disappear, it all goes public automatically. It's all programmed." Carla turned pale. "John, he's afraid he's going to die, and I'm afraid of being here when it happens." The journalist Livia, who was always nearby, appeared out of nowhere. She told us, "You see, this isn't just blackmail, it's an auction. Edward is trying to decide who will pay more, the governments or the businessmen themselves, to silence him." Carla said, "But what if no one pays?" Livia replied, "Then the whole world will know all the dirt, and you might see the world economy go into a tailspin." I almost choked. "Oh, Carla, I just wanted to see the Louvre. Now we're in the middle of a financial World War III. Meanwhile, Edward announced, "Whoever is willing to negotiate, come to me. Whoever is not, you can leave, but know that you are on the list." No one moved. Some men started to sweat, wiping their foreheads with handkerchiefs. Others reached for their phones, but security guards quickly came to collect them. Edward finished, "Tomorrow at 7 in the evening, I need a final answer. Otherwise, it all goes out to the world." Carla hugged me from the side and said quietly, "John, if we get out of this alive, I swear I'll never call you a cheapskate again." "Thanks, honey, because after this trip we're really going to be broke." And I thought, I never imagined the words "all expenses paid" would end up costing me so much. After Edward said that whoever wanted to negotiate could come to him, the hall stood still. No one had the courage to be the first to get up. It was like a game of chicken. Carla said quietly in my ear, "John, just look at their faces. I never thought I'd see so many rich men sweating bullets." "I know, Carla. Even the gel in Mr. Croft's hair is starting to run." She nudged me to stop me from laughing. It was then that, slowly, Mr. Croft, the grey-haired man who had spoken earlier, stood up. He walked to the stage, ran his hands through his hair and said, "Edward, I didn't come here to fight. I just want to know if it's really true that you have all of this recorded." Edward stared at him with a serious expression. "Do you want to see?" Mr. Croft swallowed hard. "No, I don't need to see. I believe you." Edward let out a sigh. He almost seemed relieved that someone had stopped shouting. "Then let's talk like civilized people. Are you willing to give money back to the people?" Mr. Croft turned red. He licked his dry lips. "If I say yes, do you guarantee my name won't appear anywhere? I don't make promises about the future, Croft, but I can hold the videos." While they talked, Carla kept whispering non-stop, "John, we are witnessing a multi-million-dollar deal right in front of us. Do you realize that?" "I do, and I wish I didn't. I just want to be eating a crepe on the street." Livia, the journalist, approached again. "You two need to get out of here before this becomes a police scandal. If the press arrives, they'll film you, and you'll end up on every website." Carla's eyes widened. "I don't want to be the Brazilian woman involved in an international conspiracy," I replied. "But if we leave, they'll be suspicious. Better to stay put." Meanwhile, other businessmen began to approach the stage one by one. It looked like confession at church. One would get close to Edward, speak softly, and Edward would write something down in a black notebook. Carla whispered, "Look at his little notebook, John. It looks just like the tab list at your barber shop." "Yeah, except my list is for haircuts, not embezzled billions." Mr. Shaw, the thin man with glasses, was next. He spoke, almost crying. "Edward, I have children. I can't end up in prison." Edward said, "Then do the right thing, and do it quickly." Mr. Shaw sighed and asked, "How much do you want?" Edward replied firmly, "It's not for me. It's to give back to the people." 200 million. Mr. Shaw's eyes widened. "That's impossible." "Then get ready to see your face plastered on every headline." I watched the scene, in disbelief. It was like watching an auction, but for confessions. Every time someone went up on stage, the crowd held its breath. Carla whispered, "John, if all this leaks, it will be a global scandal. And they'll say, a Brazilian couple was there." "Ma, do you think my mother could handle seeing my face in the newspaper?" She gave me another nudge. "Stop joking. This is serious." At that moment, Edward took the microphone and said, "Tomorrow night, I want confirmation of every deposit. If I don't receive everything, it all goes public. There's no turning back." A murmur began. Some businessmen were almost begging. Others were cursing, saying he was bluffing. Edward, unfazed, said, "You've spent your whole lives deceiving people. Today is the day you feel fear for the first time." Carla was almost crying. She hugged me tightly and said, "John, why didn't we just stay home? We just had to not enter that contest." I took a deep breath. "Because you wanted to see the Eiffel Tower, Carla, and I just wanted you to be happy." She smiled with tears in her eyes. "I still love you, you know, even if we become world news." "I love you too, Carla. But if I get out of this, I'm never setting foot in an exclusive event again." I looked around. The room was full of rich men, but they all seemed small. The sound of the sea outside continued to beat against the building's walls, and I thought, we thought we were coming to Paris to live a dream, but we ended up discovering the nightmare of others. The room was a battlefield, but without anyone physically raising a hand. The war there was in the glances, the whispers, the phones hidden under the table. Edward was on stage, arms crossed, observing everything. He looked like a judge in a makeshift courtroom. Carla sighed deeply and said quietly, "John, these men must have more money than all the banks combined. but today they looked like little boys caught stealing candy from the store. I murmured back, "Money buys almost everything, Carla, but it can't buy you peace of mind when someone decides to tell the truth." Meanwhile, Mr. Croft, who had already spoken with Edward, returned to his table. He sat down slowly, his hands shaking. The others looked at him as if he'd been shot. Dr. Pierce approached and whispered something in Croft's ear. I didn't hear it all, but I caught a part. "We can't let this cook ruin our lives." Carla nudged me. "John, they're going to do something stupid. I can feel it." "Carla, be quiet. Don't look, don't talk, don't move. That's what I'm trying to do here." Mr. Shaw, the thin man with glasses, began to pace in circles. He ran a hand through his thin hair, sweating. He said loudly, "Edward, what if we agree to pay half now and the rest later? You give us time to sort things out." Edward got off the stage, walked up to him very slowly, and said calmly, "There is no later. Later is what has always saved you until today. It's either now or it all goes out to the world." Mr. Shaw fell silent. At that moment, the journalist Livia appeared again. She looked worried. "You two need to get out of here. It's getting dangerous. The mood is shifting. These men aren't going to let Edward leave here alive if he doesn't accept a deal," Carla replied, frightened. "But if we try to leave, won't they be suspicious of us too?" Livia shook her head. "At this point, everyone is suspicious of everyone." I took a deep breath. "I don't know what's right or wrong anymore, Livia. I just know I don't want to be a headline back in Brazil." Suddenly, a metallic noise echoed through the hall. It sounded like something falling. Everyone turned, startled. One of the security guards had dropped a tray. Edward raised his hand and shouted, "Calm down! There's no need for violence here." Dr. Pierce shouted back, "You say that because you're holding all the videos. If you were on our side, you'd be just as desperate as we are." Edward looked at him and said, "Maybe I'm more desperate than all of you combined, but the difference is I have nothing left to lose." The tension was so thick I could feel my heart beating in my forehead. Carla held my hand and said, almost crying, "John, I don't want to die in Paris, at least not like this." "Me neither, Carla. And I haven't even eaten an escargot yet." She gave me a light slap on the arm. "John, now is not the time for jokes." It was then that Mr. Croft stood up again. He said loudly, "Edward, if you release these videos, you will ruin the entire country. There will be unemployed people, bankrupt companies. Do you want that weight on your conscience?" Edward replied firmly, "I'm not the one ruining anything. You're the ones who did that. I'm just showing what you've done." Mr. Croft seemed to want to retort, but the words wouldn't come out. At that point, Carla turned to me. "John, let's go now. I can't take it anymore." "And how do you want to leave, Carla? By flying?" "No one is leaving here until Edward says they can." She took a deep breath. "Then talk to him, John. Tell him we have nothing to do with this. And what if he thinks we're spying for someone? Better to keep quiet." Meanwhile, Edward went back on stage and started talking. "You have no idea how much dirt I've uncovered. Companies that seem to help people, but in reality only exist to launder money. Influencers who are paid to deceive the public. Politicians who pretend to protect the country but are in the pockets of these men." Some people started to cry. Others simply lowered their heads. Carla said, her eyes full of tears, "John, I'm scared. But at the same time, I'm glad someone is having the courage to say all this." I was silent, because deep down, I felt the same way. And I thought, maybe the worst part of tonight isn't discovering that the powerful steal, but realizing that we never knew half of what really goes on. Carla and I were there, kind of hidden behind a column, watching this whole mess, when Edward said something that made everyone hold their breath. "I have names, bank accounts, photos, conversations, everything. And I'm not just talking about companies, but about people you call friends." It was like he had thrown gasoline on a fire. The room erupted in murmurs. Men and women looked at each other, suspicious, as if suddenly no one was trustworthy anymore. Carla nudged me. "John, look at their faces. They're afraid of each other now." I replied, "I doubt they're more afraid than I am. I'm about to pee my pants over here." She gave me a light slap on the arm. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison, the robust one, stood up, furious. He shouted, "This is a circus. You're destroying our reputations over a handful of papers." Edward stared him down. "It's not a handful of papers. It's the lives of millions of people you've harmed, and I'm tired of staying silent." The room was so quiet, I could hear the sound of ice melting in the champagne buckets. Carla said quietly, "John, I don't know if I want him to release the videos or not. Part of me wants to see these men pay, but part of me is terrified of what could happen." "Me too, Carla, because if he releases everything, there will be people getting arrested, companies going bankrupt, and us in the middle of it all." At that moment, Mr. Shaw, the thin man with glasses, spoke in an almost pleading tone. "Edward, if you release everything, it's the common worker who will suffer. There will be unemployed people, ruined families. Do you think that's justice?" Edward took a deep breath. He looked tired, but determined. "I'm not the one ruining families. You are. I'm just showing what you've done." Meanwhile, the journalist Livia appeared at our side again. She whispered, "Edward is cornered. He doesn't want to be seen as a blackmailer, but he also doesn't want to die. He's trying to hold everything back, but at the same time, he wants to show that he has power." Carla asked, "Do you think he'll really release the videos?" Livia looked serious. "If he feels like he's about to die or be arrested, he'll release them." Suddenly, Edward spoke again. His voice was firm, but you could feel the weight of the words. "You've always lived in the shadows. You always thought you were in control. Well, now it's my turn to have control. Tomorrow, at 7 in the evening, either you pay back what you owe the people, or the world will know who you really are." "Mr." Croft shouted, "And after that, you think you're going to live peacefully, Edward? You think you'll be able to walk down the street?" Edward gave a sad smile. "I lost my peace a long time ago, and I have nothing left to lose." Carla took a deep breath. She turned to me and said, "John, this man is broken. Even if he gets out of here alive, he'll be on the run for the rest of his life." I said, "Yeah, but at least he'll have a clear conscience." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "And you, John, in his place, would you release the videos?" I was silent for a few seconds. Then I said, "I don't know, Carla. I think if it were me, I'd just want to go home and pretend I never saw anything." Meanwhile, the businessmen began to whisper among themselves. Some seemed inclined to pay. Others said Edward was bluffing. The tension was rising like a thermometer. "Doctor?" Pierce, red with rage, shouted, "If you release this, there will be blood, Edward. You've been warned." Edward replied, "If there's blood, it won't be mine that stains this country's history the most. It will be yours." I looked around. Rich men trembling, women with panicked faces, waiters standing still, not knowing whether to serve the next champagne or not. It was the classiest mess I had ever seen in my life. Carla held my arm and said quietly, "John, even though I'm scared, part of me is happy to be seeing this, because for the first time, these men are not above anyone." I smiled, tired. "Yeah, but it would be safer if we were watching this on TV." And I thought, sometimes people think the big secrets are in safes, but really, they're kept inside each person, just waiting for someone brave enough to tell them. The room seemed to get smaller with every minute. The air was hot, heavy. The lights shone too brightly, as if to amplify the nervousness of those present. Edward stood on stage, looking at the businessmen as if he were a teacher lecturing a rowdy class. Carla whispered to me, "John, I can't take it anymore. It feels like I'm stuck in a loop. It's always him threatening to release the videos, the men shouting, and then it all starts over. Welcome to the corporate world, Carla." She gave me a light slap on the arm. Mr. Croft stood up slowly and said, weary, "Edward, if you release everything, there will be a crisis. Banks, companies will fail. Innocent people will suffer. Do you want to carry that weight?" Edward took a deep breath. "I don't want to carry anything. But I also don't want to see you carrying briefcases full of money while people are starving." Mr. Croft shook his head. "You don't understand. Things aren't that simple. The system is complex. Edward replied firmly. "The system is corrupt because you made it that way." At that moment, Mr. Harrison, the robust one, slammed his hand on the table. "Edward, if we pay, do you promise to erase everything? Forever?" Edward looked at him serious. "I won't erase it. I'm not a fool. I'll keep the proof safe, but if you pay, it won't see the light of day." Mr. Harrison shouted, "So you want to keep us hostage for the rest of our lives?" Edward replied, "I just want to make sure you don't go back to stealing." I looked at Carla. She had tears in her eyes. "John, this man is destroyed, but he's holding on. I don't know if I admire him or fear him." "I think both, Carla, because courage and madness sometimes go hand in hand." At that, Livia, the journalist, came up to us again. She spoke softly. "You two need to decide. If there's trouble here, there will be police, press. They'll round everyone up, and you're tourists. You won't have anyone to defend you." Carla asked, "But if we leave now, won't they be suspicious?" Livia sighed. "They will, but it's less risky than staying until the end." Meanwhile, Edward continued on stage. "You've always said that our country is a lost cause, that corruption is cultural. Well, you should know that you are the ones who create that culture. It's time to give back what you've taken." Dr. Pierce, red-faced, retorted, "You're destroying the country. You're not saving anyone. You're killing confidence in the economy." Edward shot back. "Confidence in whom? In you. You destroyed that confidence a long time ago. I'm just showing the truth." Carla held my arm and whispered, "John, I swear I thought this trip would be just wine, cheese, and the Eiffel Tower. I didn't know it came with an economics lesson." "I know, honey. If I had known, I would have stayed home cutting hair." She smiled, even in the midst of the chaos. Edward, his voice a bit hoarse now, said, "I'm not asking for money for myself. I want public funds reinforced. Schools, hospitals, housing. It's the least you can do after the damage you've done." Mr. Croft said, almost in a groan, "Edward, no one will believe you. Even if we pay, they'll always think you did this to get rich." Edward took a deep breath. "Let them think what they want. I don't care about my reputation anymore. I just care about being able to sleep at night." The room fell silent again. Edward looked on the verge of collapse, but he held himself together, firm. Carla, her voice trembling, asked me, "John, do you think he'll really release everything?" "I don't know, Carla, but from the look on his face, I think he's ready for anything." At that moment, Mr. Shaw stood up. He said, "Edward, you've already won, man. Look at the state everyone's in. If you release these videos, you'll destroy our families. For God's sake, find a calmer way to resolve this." Edward said in an almost sad tone, "I already tried to resolve it calmly, but no one listened to me. They just called me crazy." Carla wiped her eyes and said, "John, if he releases everything, it will be the end. But if he doesn't, these men will keep stealing. There's no good way out." I looked at her and said, "The only thing I know, Carla, is that we'll have a hell of a story to tell our grandkids." And I thought, maybe the biggest bombshell of the night wasn't the videos, but the simple fact that someone finally had the courage to tell the truth. The room was starting to empty out, but no one was really leaving. Some businessmen moved away, whispering in corners, exchanging fearful glances. They seemed to be plotting something. Carla clung to my arm and whispered, "John, I don't trust any of these men. They're too quiet now. And when rich people get quiet, it's because they're up to something." I shrugged. "Yeah, Carla. Their silence is louder than anything Edward has said so far." Meanwhile, Edward was on stage, looking out at the room as if he wanted to memorize every face. His face was drawn, but his eyes still had that spark. He spoke, calmer now. "I'm no better than you. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life too, but I've never let anyone die because of my mistakes. Can you all say the same?" No one answered. Some men lowered their eyes, ashamed. Livia, the journalist, came back to us and said softly, "You two need to get out of here. Now. It's getting dangerous. I see security talking on their radios all the time. I think they're planning to take Edward out by force." Carla's eyes widened. "Kill him?" Livia sighed. "Maybe not kill, but make him disappear. Who knows? It wouldn't be the first time." I went cold. And us? Are they going to make us disappear too? Livia replied, "You're just tourists, but if you stay, you could end up arrested as accomplices or witnesses." Carla pulled me. "John, let's go, now." While we were debating whether to leave or not, Edward came down from the stage. He walked to the middle of the room. Everyone moved away, clearing a path for him. It was like Moses parting the sea. He held up his tablet and said, "There's no use hiding anymore. You are all here because you knew there was dirt, and because you know I have the proof. You can call me a blackmailer, but what you've done is much worse." Mr. Harrison, the robust one, said, "Desperate, you're destroying the country." Edward replied, "The country was already destroyed. I'm just showing you the rubble." At that point, Dr. Pierce approached Edward, speaking softly. He seemed to be pleading, but suddenly he took a step back and pulled a small object from his pocket. Carla grabbed my arm. "John, he's going to do something," I shouted. "Watch out, Edward." But to my surprise, it wasn't a weapon. It was a flash drive. Dr. Pierce handed the flash drive to Edward, his hand shaking. "It's all here. Everything you said. Contracts, names, accounts. I kept copies for years. If I'm going down, I'm not going down alone." Edward took the flash drive, surprised. "Why are you giving me this?" "Doctor," Pierce replied, "because if there's going to be a bombshell, I'm not going to be the only one to explode. There are plenty of people more powerful than me. Let the ones who stole the most pay." The room erupted in a murmur. Some men were shouting. Others were calling for silence. The confusion grew. Edward, still holding the flash drive, said, "Now you're starting to get it. No one here is innocent, but no one here is immortal either." Carla was in a panic. "John, let's go." "The police are going to be here, I can see it." "Carla, at this point if we run, they'll think we're accomplices. Better to stay put." She sighed. "But I feel like crying, John. I just wanted to see the sunset on the Seine." "I know, honey, and I just wanted to buy an Eiffel Tower keychain." Mr. Croft, trembling, raised his voice. "Edward, if you release everything, you will die. You know that, right?" Edward took a deep breath. "I know, but I've lived with fear for too long. If I die, at least it will have been for something worthwhile." I looked at Carla and I said, almost without thinking, "I think deep down he doesn't want money. He wants revenge." Carla nodded, emotional. Revenge or justice. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, and I thought maybe no one there was completely good or completely evil. But that night everyone was afraid to look in the mirror. The hall was in a silent chaos. No one was shouting, but everyone was talking softly at the same time, as if they were plotting secret plans. The air was so heavy, it felt like we were breathing concrete. Edward was holding the flash drive that Dr. Pierce had just given him. He looked at the object in his hand, then raised his face and stared at the entire room. "You always thought money could buy everything, including silence. Well, today I'm the proof that it can't." Carla held my hand so tightly I almost lost circulation. "John, he's going to release everything now. I can feel it. And I can feel my heart about to jump out of my mouth, Carla." At that moment, Mr. Croft, almost in tears, stood up one more time. "Edward, I'm not going to beg, but think carefully. Releasing all this won't just destroy the guilty. It will destroy entire families. There will be unemployment, panic. Do you want that weight on your conscience?" Edward took a deep breath. He looked tired, but still firm. "I think about it every day, Croft. But you should also think about the weight of the people who died waiting for a hospital bed, or the children without schools, because the money disappeared." The elegant blonde woman, who had questioned everything from the beginning, raised her voice. "So that's it, Edward. You want to be a martyr? You want to die a hero?" Edward replied, "I'm no hero. I'm just a man tired of pretending everything is okay." Suddenly, the hall doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits entered, speaking quickly in French. It was security, but they looked like police too. The room went cold. Carla's eyes widened. "John, now we're really screwed. It's the police. Or worse, Carla, it's lawyers." She almost slapped me again, but she was too busy trembling. One of the men in the dark suit said loudly, Mr. Edward Santoro, we need to speak with you. Now. Edward looked at them, calm, and said, "You can speak here, in front of everyone. I have nothing left to hide." The man retorted, "This is not a matter to be discussed in public." Edward held the microphone tightly. He looked at all of us. "Maybe this is where my story ends. But if something happens to me, you know where to find the truth." He held up the flash drive. "It's all here, and in many other places. You can even kill me, but you can no longer silence the truth." Carla was crying softly. I pulled her closer and said, "Calm down, honey. It's going to be okay." She shook her head. "John, nothing is going to be okay after this. The whole world is going to be turned upside down." At that moment, Dr. Pierce shouted, "Edward, you're going to destroy us along with yourself. If you die, we all die." Edward looked at him. "You're only afraid because you know you deserve to fall." Then Edward came down from the stage. He walked slowly toward the men in suits. He stopped in front of them and said, "Are you going to take me? Fine. But remember, if I disappear, every file that's saved will appear online, and the world will know everything." One of the men in suits whispered something into his radio. He looked serious. Edward raised his arms as if surrendering. Carla and I watched, frozen, not daring to even blink. Edward turned to us one last time. He looked at the whole crowd and said, almost in a whisper, "Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry for ruining the dinner." 2 security guards escorted Edward to the door. The hall fell into absolute silence, as if no one had the courage to breathe. The sound of the door slamming shut echoed like a gunshot. Some businessmen started to cry. Others shouted, saying he was going to ruin everything. Livia, the journalist, approached and said, "I guess it's over, or it's just begun. Depends on your point of view." Carla hugged me tightly. "John, let's go, before the police decide to take us too." "Finally, we agree on something, Carla. Let's go." We left the hall slowly, almost walking on eggshells. Outside, Paris was lit up as if nothing had happened. The cold wind hit our faces. The lights of the Eiffel Tower shone in the distance. Carla sighed, her eyes full of tears. "John, I'm never going to say our vacations are boring again." I gave a tired laugh. "Yeah, honey, but next time, we're just going to the beach, at most." And I thought, we came to Paris looking for a dream, but we ended up discovering that behind the lights there's also a lot of darkness. All right, it's that time. If this story has you hooked, let's do the full ritual. Hit the like button to support the channel, subscribe so you don't miss a beat, and ring that bell to be the first to know what's coming. Your opinion is golden, so drop it in the comments below.